What would you do if, after selling your soul for an empire, your past returned not to destroy you, but to show you the perfect life you lost? This is the story of Alexander Vance, a real estate magnate who 20 years ago took the most ruthless decision of his life, to abandon his devoted wife for the cold embrace of ambition. 2 decades of immense success and silent emptiness. Then, at a dazzling charity gala in Madrid, his past materializes. The woman he cast aside is radiant, transformed, and unrecognizable. But it is the handsome young man at her side, with eyes that are a mirror of his own, what ignites a terrifying question. Has Alexander Vance built his fortune upon the ruin of his own happiness? The rain fell softly over River City, making the streets gleam like shattered mirrors. When Anna Vance pushed open the door of St. Jude's Hospital, 7 years had passed since her disappearance, but tonight 1 glance would be enough for the past to exact its debt. If you stay with me until the end, you will discover why some truths can never be buried forever. So take a deep breath, because our story begins now. The echo of a daughter in River City. The echo of a daughter in River City. The autumn rain diligently washed the streets of River City with the patience of one who understands the weight of silence. Puddles reflected the neon glare of corner pharmacies and the slow headlights of cars, as if the city itself were breathing at a pace that was not its own. Anna Vance pulled up the collar of her jacket, trying to shield herself from the cold wind that sliced at her skin like fine needles. Eleanor Wells' small, warm hand gripped hers tightly, and that childish pressure was, paradoxically, the only point of stability in a world that seemed perpetually on the verge of collapse. St. Jude's Hospital loomed ahead, solid and imposing, its illuminated windows cutting the night like warning beacons. Anna paused for a moment on the sidewalk, gazing at the buildings she knew too well. Every brick, every hidden corridor harbored ghosts she had fiercely fought to bury. The reflection of the blue and white sign in the pavement puddles seemed to mock her, as if the hospital were calling her back to the very past she had sworn she had left behind. "Mommy?" Eleanor's voice was soft, barely a whisper. "Are you scared?" Anna swallowed before crouching down to adjust her daughter's pink hat. The little girl's face was a portrait of innocence, brown eyes too large for her frail body, pale skin, imbued with an energy that seemed to emanate more from spirit than from physical strength. "No, my love," she lied, forcing a smile that hurt to maintain. "I'm just cold. Let's go in." The hospital lobby smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee, an aroma Anna would never forget. A smell that clung to memory like a sad, forgotten song. The polished marble floor shone intensely, reflecting the hurrying feet of doctors and nurses. With every step, Anna felt her heart fiercely beating against her ribs, as if it wanted to escape before she herself could. The echo of clicking heels in the corridor was an uncomfortable reminder. She was returning to the same scenario she had fled 7 years ago. "Good evening. Patient's name?" A nurse with an impeccable blue uniform, a braid, a portfolio in hand, and a practiced, tired smile. "Eleanor Vance." Anna's voice came out lower than she intended. "Consultation with Dr. Martin Wells." The name escaped her lips like a cutting razor. She tasted the metallic flavor of dread in her mouth. For years, she had avoided uttering those syllables, as if ignoring the name was enough to keep the past at bay. Now, each letter resonated within her, tearing open raw memories she had tried to bury under layers of routine and distance. "Ah, yes," the nurse said, typing something on the reception computer. "4th floor, consultation 7. Please wait in the corridor on the right." "Yes." As they walked, the hospital seemed to close in around them. The sterile white walls and green signs pointed directions that felt too familiar, and every corner seemed to harbor invisible eyes. Anna took a deep breath, but the suffocating sensation didn't diminish. The distant hum of heart monitors mixed with the sharp sound of elevators, composing a symphony of tension that only she seemed to hear. They sat on a worn leather bench in the corridor. Eleanor swung her feet in the air, humming an invented tune, oblivious to the crushing weight on her mother's shoulders. Anna, instead, felt her hands becoming sticky with sweat. With every minute that passed, the memory of a face she knew too well threatened to flood her mind. She tried to divert her thoughts, concentrating on her daughter's soft breathing, the faint sound of footsteps down the corridor. But nothing worked. The click of the consultation room doorknob interrupted the torrent of her thoughts. The door opened, and he appeared. Dr. Martin Wells was exactly as she remembered, and at the same time, completely different. The impeccable white lab coat, the dark hair carefully slicked back, the confident posture of someone accustomed to holding lives in his hands. The years had only added gravitas to his face, subtle lines of tiredness that didn't diminish his imposing presence. Anna felt her inner world tremble. A muscle in her jaw contracted involuntarily. He nodded, inviting them in. When their eyes met for a single, fleeting second, Anna looked away quickly, as if that single glance could pierce through all the formidable walls she had painstakingly built over 7 years. But deep down, she knew 1 second was too dangerous. Eleanor entered first, and Martin knelt to the girl's height. A discreet smile softened his professional features. "Are you Eleanor?" he asked with a sweetness that seemed automatic, yet carried something unexpectedly warm. "Yes," the little girl smiled shyly. "My heart makes a funny noise sometimes." Martin let out a soft laugh, and that sound was a nostalgic punch to Anna's chest. He examined the girl with professional attention, but at some point, something changed. A strange gleam crossed his eyes when Eleanor instinctively grasped his finger with the absolute confidence of a child. It was brief, almost imperceptible, but Anna heard it. The kind of gesture that isn't explained in medical exams or diagnostic reports. The consultation room smelled of paper and antiseptic. Walls were adorned with diplomas and photographs of medical teams. As Martin asked questions about symptoms and medical history, Anna answered mechanically, trying to keep her voice steady, but each phrase seemed to tear at her throat. "Any recent fevers?" he asked, looking up from his notes. "Twice this month," she hesitated. "Nothing too high." The silence that followed wasn't merely clinical. It was the heavy presence of something neither of them dared to name. Eleanor, oblivious to everything, played with the doctor's stethoscope, laughing at the muffled sound of her own heart. Her laughter echoed in the consultation room like a spark of life, briefly illuminating the charged atmosphere. When the consultation ended, Martin gently squeezed Eleanor's hand. "You are brave," he told her. "Very brave." The little girl's smile was immediate, radiant, and something in it pierced the surgeon's carefully constructed armor. He couldn't explain what he felt, an uncomfortable familiarity, a warmth that shouldn't exist. As mother and daughter left the consultation room, Martin remained motionless, looking at the closed door. And the echo of that innocent smile insisted on remaining in his mind. The past is revealed. What deep secret do you think Martin Wells hides from his past that is now resurfacing? Share your theories in the comments, give a like, and subscribe to our channel. This is just the beginning. 2. The trauma and the flight, the unspoken loss. The captivating smile of Eleanor faded along with the consultation room door that closed behind them. But inside Martin, something remained lit, unsettling. He stood still for a few seconds, his hands resting on the edge of the examination table, as if he needed to feel something solid, so as not to get lost in the whirlwind of memories threatening to surface. It was absurd. Doctors saw dozens of children every week, but that little girl, there was something about her, a glimpse of déjà vu that cut through him like a silent razor. In the corridor, Anna felt her legs tremble as she clung to her daughter's hand. Every step toward the elevator seemed to open a void in her stomach. The present world, the smell of antiseptic, the voices of nurses, the cold lights, dissolved, and the past emerged like an unexpected blow. Olive City. Years ago, the city beat with a rhythm Anna both loved and feared. Narrow streets, lined with old facades and cafes, that exuded the aroma of fresh bread and nostalgia. In those days, she believed a heart could find its entire universe in a whispered promise. Martin was that promise. Young, ambitious, with the future shining in his eyes and a touch that seemed to write certainties on her skin. They lived on stolen moments, silent laughs between worn wooden tables, vows of love made with intertwined fingers in hidden alleyways. A private universe where nothing seemed capable of hurting them. Anna vividly recalled a Sunday afternoon waiting for him at the small cafe on Tree Street. The sun streamed through the old windows, reflecting off the tiled floor. She stirred her coffee without drinking it, smiling to herself as she recalled the previous night. Martin had told her the world felt smaller when he was with her, that no one would ever make her cry. The painful backdrop of the memory arrived, because just days later, her world fell apart. It was an afternoon when the hospital where Martin was doing his residency became the setting for her first great wound. She was looking for him, anxious to tell him what the pharmacy test had confirmed that very morning. 2 clear red lines that pulsed with hope and fear. Her heart trembled between overwhelming joy and crushing apprehension. As she passed through the corridor of the administrative area, she heard male voices coming from a slightly open room. She recognized Martin's distinct timbre instantly, and her steps faltered. She smiled to herself, ready to surprise him with the news that would change everything. But then she listened. "I'm just not ready for anything serious right now." His voice was firm, almost casual, as if he were discussing a soccer game and not someone's future. "And that girl," his friend's voice laughed softly. "She seems quite smitten. She's pretty sure." Martin shrugged in the echo of the memory. "But it doesn't make sense for me to complicate my life right now. I have other priorities." Each word was a sharp cut. Anna felt the floor disappear beneath her feet, the air escaping her lungs. The corridor spun. She stood motionless, her hand still clutching the bag where the positive proof was hidden. Everything she had believed crumbled in seconds. The scene imprinted itself on her mind like a painful photograph. Martin laughing softly, his eyes full of youthful ambition, completely oblivious to the world she now carried in her womb. She ran crying through the street, mixing her tears with the rain that had begun to fall over Olive City. That night, she met a different kind of silence, the silence of abandonment. The following days were a blur of nausea and hasty decisions. Martin's mother had already made it clear to her once, with that sharp, decisive look during an unexpected visit to Anna's apartment, that girls from the wrong side of the tracks had no future with her son. The contempt in her voice was an old scar, and now it burned hotter than ever. When the first ultrasound revealed 2 heartbeats, 2 small hearts fiercely fighting to cling to life, the fear became absolute. It was no longer just about her, it was about protecting them, about not allowing a powerful family that would never truly accept them to take them from her arms. In the silence of the night, she packed her bags. She took the train to Cape Cod, leaving behind the scent of coffee from Tree Street, the alleyways full of whispered promises, and the man who had promised her worlds. In that cold train carriage, between sobs and dizziness, she decided to bury the Anna he knew. She adopted her maternal grandmother's maiden name, found temporary jobs, far from any record that could trace her. every night, she felt the precious weight of the two hearts growing inside her. Every morning she repeated to herself that everything would be fine, that she wouldn't look back. When labor pains began, the world seemed a blur of lights and muffled shouts. Eleanor arrived first, crying faintly but alive. The second baby, however, stopped before it could truly begin. The absence weighed like lead. Anna held her daughter in her arms, silently promising her that no one would ever take her away. The past, however, does not die easily. 7 years later, the innocent smile of a little girl was piercing the formidable walls she had spent a lifetime building. A traumatic past. Do you think a traumatic past can truly be left behind, or does it always find a way to resurface? Leave your comments below. 3. The heart's verdict, the collision. The memory of the flight always came in fragments, like pieces of glass scattered on a dark road. She recalled the rhythmic sound of the rain beating on the windshield, the wipers fighting in vain against the downpour, and the cold that soaked her to the bone, despite the sultry summer heat in Portugal. The rental car smelled of damp fabric, and her hands shook on the steering wheel, not only from fear, but because of the contractions that came in waves, tearing through her body prematurely. She no longer knew if she was crying from pain or panic, because every sob seemed to pull another sharp pang in her abdomen. She recalled talking to herself out loud, as if to deceive the crushing loneliness. "Hold on, my loves. Just a little longer. We're going to make it." Headlights suddenly appeared, a pair of blinding eyes coming from the wrong direction, as if fate had decided to end everything right there. Anna had no time to think. The impact was a deafening explosion, a silent flash that threw her against the seatbelt and shook her entire body with the violent force of crushed metal. Then came the silence, a silence that seemed to swallow the entire world. When she opened her eyes, water ran down her face. Rain or blood? She didn't know. The smell of fuel and wet earth filled her lungs, and only then did the sound return. Distant sirens, indistinct voices, and her own ragged breathing. She tried to move and felt her right arm burning with unbearable pain. Before fear could completely overwhelm her, another contraction ripped through her, pulling a scream from her lips. Life, stubborn and challenging, announced itself even in the midst of chaos. Waking up in the hospital of a small Miami town was like emerging from a murky nightmare. The white ceiling had moisture stains, and the hum of the ventilator seemed to mock her fragility. Her arm was in a cast. Her face throbbed with a deep pain that seemed to fuse skin and soul. A tired-faced nurse entered. She adjusted the IV drip and told her gently, "You are safe now, but you have to be strong." The phrase etched itself into her memory, because soon after, the surgeries began. Anna saw her reflection for the first time days later, in a small mirror brought to her by a hospital orderly. Her cheekbones looked more pronounced, her nose subtly different, and two thin scars discreetly crossed her skin near her left eyebrow and chin. It wasn't just her face that had changed. The gaze that met hers in the mirror was not that of the young woman who had dreamed in Olive City. It was the gaze of someone who had known loss intimately and would never again trust any promise. The birth occurred in the same hospital, under cold lights and muffled screams. The first cry was weak, but brought a thread of hope. Eleanor was tiny, so small she seemed made of glass. The second baby, however, was born in silence. Anna remembered the feeling of absolute emptiness when the doctor sadly shook his head, and the strength she had to gather not to collapse because one of her daughters needed her, alive, whole, resilient. In that suffocating hospital room, between the distant sound of rain and the sharp smell of cheap disinfectant, Anna made a silent vow. She would bury not only the love that had destroyed her, but also the life that had almost killed her. There would be no more Olive City, no more Martin, No more the naive girl who believed in whispered promises. The accident had been a definitive end, and at the same time, a forced restart. The following months were an emotional exile. Alone with Eleanor, she learned the heavy weight of constant fear. The little girl had a delicate heart. Every fever seemed like a death sentence. Every doctor's appointment, a battle against the panic of losing what remained of her soul. Anna changed cities whenever she felt overly curious glances. She created a quiet routine where every step was calculated not to draw attention, and every smile was measured, as if the world could perceive her secret. With time, the physical pain diminished, but the trauma remained etched in every fiber of her being. Driving at night, smelling fuel, or hearing heavy rain were triggers that made her relive the accident. Even so, she never gave in to weakness. The rebirth imposed by the accident transformed her into a woman of stone on the outside and glass on the inside. She promised herself that no one from that old life would ever find her, that Eleanor would grow up far from any shadow of the past. But fate, cruel and patient, waited 7 years to collect its debt. It only took the innocent smile of a little girl in a too-bright consultation room for all the meticulously built walls to begin to crack. The truth is undeniable. Can a traumatic past ever be completely left behind? Or does it always find a way to resurface? Comment your ideas below. 4. The relentless collision. The final doubt. The wind that night sounded like ancient whispers, and every step Martin took on the wet pavement echoed like a sentence. Since the unsettling encounter with his former residency colleagues, a deep fissure had opened within him. Their scornful laughter when mentioning Anna, their cruel insinuations about her disappearance, and the malice disguised as nostalgia resonated in his head like relentless torture. She disappeared off the map. She definitely found a way to leave with the shame. They said she had a tumor, but who knows if it wasn't something else. She was beautiful. Yes, but poor. People like that simply disappear or become a sad memory. Every phrase was a fresh wound. Martin could barely respond, only feeling his stomach churn, while the glass of wine in his hand seemed to weigh a ton. When he heard the rumor that she might have died, his heart inexplicably squeezed, and in that instant, he understood. No matter how much he tried to protect it, Anna had never been just a memory. She was the wound that never healed. That dawn, upon arriving home, he sat in the dark living room, with the rain beating against the windows, and searched for answers. The first doubt corroded him: the tumor. He vaguely recalled old conversations, the feeble excuses, her sudden disappearance. He inquired at the hospital records, spoke discreetly with medical colleagues, made calls that cost him a piece of his pride, and the truth arrived like a dry, brutal blow to the chest. Anna never had the tumor they spoke of. That whole story had simply been a convenient shadow to justify her disappearance. Then, only one plausible explanation remained. The next night, unable to control the overwhelming impulse, he drove to the modest neighborhood where she now lived. He parked his car at a distance, on an almost deserted street, and simply watched. The light from her living room cast comforting shadows. Through the window, he glimpsed the scene that would change everything. Eleanor, sitting on the rug, laughing while flipping through an old photo album. Martin's heart pounded wildly, erratically. Even from that distance, the small dimple that formed on the little girl's face when she smiled seemed agonizingly familiar to him. And when the girl pointed to a photo of a young Anna, laughing in a way he remembered as if it were yesterday, something deep inside him shattered. It was no longer doubt. It was a primal instinct, a certainty that arose from the deepest part of his soul. The next day, his decision was automatic. He could no longer pretend not to see the signs, not to feel that undeniable pull. When he knocked on the door of the small apartment, his heart pounded, as in a critical operating room. But there was no scalpel that could save him from what he was about to hear. Anna opened the door with a tense face, as if she already anticipated the storm. Martin's gaze pierced her, looking for something that would confirm or deny the suspicion consuming him. He took a deep breath, feeling the words burn in his throat. "Anna, who is Eleanor's father?" The silence that followed was suffocating. She froze, her eyes wide for an instant, before she recovered a fragile mask of control. A second of hesitation that, for Martin, sounded like a silent confession. But then the lie came, dry and almost convincing. Her father passed away before she was born. He stood motionless, feeling the answer echo like a dull razor. He wanted to believe, wanted to cling to the words passed away, and let that be a final point. But something within him roared in denial. The internal storm, the one that had been brewing since the first time Eleanor had instinctively grasped his finger in the consultation, was now complete. Martin's eyes searched hers, desperate to find any crack of truth. But Anna sustained the lie with a desperate strength, and he understood that it wasn't just fear. It was protection, an invisible shield she had raised against the past, against him, against anything that could threaten the little fortress she had meticulously built for herself and her daughter. "I understand," he said, his voice hoarse, almost unrecognizable. But he didn't understand. He didn't accept it. His distrust burned, transforming into a silent obsession. When he left the apartment, the sky was darkening again, announcing another storm. The cold wind cut his skin, but what truly chilled him was the mixture of rage and deep pain. Rage for having been excluded from a story that was perhaps his. Pain for feeling that something precious had slipped through his hands without him being able to prevent it. In the following days, Martin alternated between professional silence and the restlessness that consumed him inside. Every time he saw Eleanor in the consultation, the paternal instinct screamed louder. The way she looked at him, trusting him, unreservedly, smiling with that dimple he recognized in himself. None of that could be a coincidence. Anna, in turn, felt the emotional net closing in. The vow she tried to bury with denial returned in her dreams, and the lie she uttered at the door weighed like an anchor on her chest. She knew Martin hadn't fully believed her. She knew that at any moment the past she tried to bury could explode with all its force. In every subsequent meeting, the dialogues between them became more loaded with tension, although wrapped in formality. Simple words like, "How is she?" or "Are the tests ready?" arrived impregnated with everything that could not be said. It was like walking on glass, each step more dangerous than the last. Inside, Martin felt he was close to discovering everything. And Anna, desperate, knew she didn't have much time left before all the walls she had built with so much sacrifice collapsed. And so the seed of almost discovery was planted, silent but relentless. The storm was no longer in the sky. It lived inside them, ready to destroy everything that was a lie. The internal storm. What lesson do you think Anna will learn now that the truth is so close to being revealed? Will she continue to hide or finally confess? Share your boldest predictions in the comments section. Don't miss a beat of this incredible story. Give a like, subscribe to our channel, and activate notifications. V. The anchor of hope. The final crisis. The storm, now internal, found its devastating expression in Eleanor's fragile body. On a suffocating afternoon, as Anna washed the small dinner plates, a dull thud echoed from the living room. The plate slipped from her fingers as she saw her daughter collapsed on the rug, her face pale, her lips tinged with an almost imperceptible blue. Anna's heart exploded in silent despair as she ran toward the girl, feeling the crushing weight of all the years of silence pressing down on her chest. "Eleanor!" she screamed, her voice broken by a fear she had never known. "Sweetheart, look at me, please!" The world around her dissolved into blurred patches of furniture, walls, and distant memories. There was only the frantic beating of her heart and the small body that seemed to vanish in her arms. When she arrived at the hospital, the white, sterile corridor seemed like an extension of her own panic. Nurses rushed by, their voices overlapping in a symphony of urgency. But all Anna felt was the terrifying void of, what if I lose her? Martin appeared out of nowhere, and for an instant, she felt a strange mix of relief and overwhelming guilt. He didn't ask questions. He simply looked at the girl, and instinct took over. "Emergency room, now," he ordered, his voice firm, cutting through the chaos. The small body disappeared on the gurney, and he vanished behind the double doors, carrying the authority of one who bears not only medical responsibility, but also a pain he still didn't dare to admit. Anna remained in the waiting room, hugging herself, unable to control her tremors. 7 years of silence, 7 years of lies, 7 years of trying to bury the past, and now fate was collecting its entire debt at once. Every second that passed was a needle piercing her chest. She thought of all the times she almost told the truth, all the glances she avoided, all the words she never uttered. If something happened to her daughter, none of that would matter anymore. Neither the fear, nor the shame, nor the obsessive protection that had led her to build that life of lies. The hours stretched into what felt like days. Every time a doctor rushed past the corridor, Anna's heart skipped a beat, preparing for the worst. Until finally, Martin appeared. His face was etched with exhaustion, his lab coat stained. But his eyes had an intensity Anna would never forget. "She's going to be fine," he said, and the immense weight of those words almost made her collapse. "But we need to talk, Anna. No later. Now." The waiting room seemed to shrink. Anna felt the walls closing in. The floor disappeared beneath her feet. It was as if the whole world was about to listen to the truth she had guarded with fire and iron for 7 years. Martin's voice was low, but cutting. "I need to know. I saved your daughter, but I need to know if she is also my daughter." The silence that followed was made up of all the screams she had suppressed, all the nights she cried alone, all the fear that had haunted her since she decided to disappear. Anna's heart hammered, as if it wanted to escape her chest. Outside, the city continued indifferent, but inside, her world was about to collapse. And for the first time, Anna felt there was no longer any way to flee the past, nor the man who, even without knowing it, had always been present in every beat of her daughter's heart. This is the moment of truth. What do you think Anna will finally reveal to Martin? And how will this revelation change their lives forever? Share your boldest predictions in the comments section. If this story is touching your heart, don't let it end here. Give a like to show you also believe in soul-comforting endings. Comment below which moment moved you the most on this journey of love and reunion. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any new story that will make you laugh, cry, and fall in love again. Share it with those you love. Spread this emotion and comfort other hearts too, because stories like these truly come alive when they are felt and shared. The triple embrace. The unburdening. The hospital corridor seemed to have swallowed all the sounds of the world. All that remained was the distant echo of monitors and the soft brushing of gowns on the waxed floor. A reminder that life continued around them, indifferent to the abyss in which Anna and Martin found themselves. She knelt down, no longer feeling her legs. Her chest rose and fell in ragged sobs. A knot choked her throat. There were no words enough to explain 7 years of silence, 7 years of fear, 7 years of hidden love. Martin, his hand still trembling from the effort of the surgery, looked at the woman he knew intimately, not by her body, but by her gaze, which had always told him silent stories. His world, already fractured, now broke into pieces. Fragments of pain and yearning, of loss and rediscovery. Our daughter, he murmured almost to himself, as if he needed to prove that such a phrase could exist outside the dreams he never admitted to having. Anna tried to stand, but the weight of guilt dragged her back to the floor. Hot, salty tears burned her face. She gripped her hands tightly, almost in a plea for judgment or absolution. I tried to protect you. Her voice was a raw, broken whisper. When I knew I was pregnant, I panicked. I knew your family would never accept a woman like me. I was just a lost resident with no one on my side. And you were everything. I couldn't risk losing my daughter. The silence between them was alive, pulsing, an electrical field about to explode. Martin closed his eyes for an instant, and the memories surfaced like sharp razors. The residency corridors, the furtive glances, the quiet laughs, the stolen kiss on a rainy night that changed everything without either of them realizing. You should have trusted me, he finally said, his voice hoarse, a mixture of contained anger and lingering pain. 7 years. 7 years, Anna, 7 years without me knowing I had a daughter. She squeezed his hands even tighter, almost pleading. I know I was wrong, but when I lost him, her breath hitched and the words hung suspended. I was having twins, Martin, a boy and a girl. He didn't survive, and I couldn't bear the idea of bringing you that pain. I buried myself along with him. The revelation fell like thunder. Martin's chest tightened. The image of a son he never knew pierced his heart like an invisible arrow. It was, at the same time, pain and delayed mourning, but also a deep understanding. The woman kneeling before him wasn't just guilty. She was a survivor of a silent tragedy. He knelt down in front of her, ignoring the cold hospital floor. His large hands cradled her small, trembling face, forcing her to look him in the eyes. Right now, I should hate you, he said with a raw sincerity that weighed in the air. But all I feel is that I lost you twice, and I'm not going to let that happen again. His tears fell onto her hands, which then pulled her into an embrace that seemed to want to sew 7 years of rupture together in seconds. It was a desperate, messy hug, where pain and love met. They intertwined. She felt her body finally give way, as if this were the first time in years Anna had truly breathed. In the room behind them, Eleanor slowly began to open her eyes. Morning light filtered through the blinds, and the steady beat of the monitor was almost a lullaby. The little girl blinked, confused, but upon seeing the familiar faces nearby, her mother's and the doctor's, who now had a different light in his eyes, a sleepy smile spread across her lips. Mommy! She called, her voice weak but full of hope. Anna rushed to her, kissing her forehead, her hair, her small hands. Martin followed her, and for the first time, he touched his daughter with the complete and undeniable knowledge that she was his. The contact was hesitant, almost reverent, but loaded with a silent promise. He would never leave her in danger alone again. When Eleanor fell asleep again, exhausted, the two of them remained there, side by side, watching the little girl's chest rise and fall in a tranquil rhythm. Between them, there were no longer masks, only the shared grief for the lost son, and the undeniable love for what remained. Martin broke the silence with a whisper laden with fierce determination. I never stopped loving you, Anna. Never. And now, neither you nor our daughter will ever leave my life again, no matter what happens. She closed her eyes, allowing herself, finally, to believe. 7 years of fear melted away in that instant, replaced by something that though fragile and full of scars, had the strength of a new beginning. He took her hand, intertwining their fingers, and he knew that from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same again. The unbroken promise, the legacy of survival. The afternoon sun painted the park with golden hues, as if the whole world had decided to celebrate that beautiful Sunday. Anna walked slowly beside Martin, hand in hand, watching Eleanor run freely across the grass, her loose hair fluttering behind her, her laughter echoing like pure music. She carried a vibrant red balloon, and the braided string seemed almost alive between her small fingers. With every step, the balloon rose and fell, dancing playfully with the wind, as if it were an extension of the girl herself. Anna felt a pang in her chest, a mix of pure, overflowing happiness and a relief so profound it almost hurt. After so many years of fear, of hiding, of heavy secrets, she could simply exist. She could see them like this, side by side, laughing, without the world judging or taking what was hers. "Look at her," Martin murmured, his voice low and laden with raw emotion. "It's as if the entire sky fits in that smile." Anna took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of his hand in hers. "I'm still scared, you know," she confessed, her voice trembling with sincerity. "Scared that all of this, is just a dream." Martin stopped and gently pulled her closer. His eyes, moist and firm, met hers like an anchor, holding her steady. "Then I promise you," his voice was unbroken, "if it is a dream, I will spend the rest of my life making it last." He kissed her forehead, and that simple gesture seemed to strip away the last remnants of pain she still carried inside. Eleanor ran back, breathless, her cheeks flushed from the effort. "Mom! Dad! Look!" She held up the balloon that had almost escaped her. It almost flew away, but I caught it. Both adults knelt down at the same time, and Anna wrapped her daughter in a tight embrace, while Martin covered her with kisses. A tight, warm, triple hug, full of silent promises. For an instant, nothing else existed. Only the warmth of their hands, the sweet scent of childhood, the deep feeling that finally they were truly whole. They sat on the grass, and Eleanor rested her head on Anna's lap, her eyes heavy from so much playing. Martin observed every detail, the way the dimples appeared when his daughter smiled, an echo of the woman he had never stopped loving. The way the wind playfully ruffled Anna's hair that no longer needed to hide from anyone. However, the red balloon suddenly slipped away, floating upwards, slowly, gracefully. Eleanor tried to reach it, but then laughed as she saw it float too high to catch. "Now he's free," she exclaimed, clapping her small hands. Anna and Martin looked at each other. There was something deeply symbolic in that balloon disappearing into the sky, as if all the fears and sorrows that had bound them for so many years were also finally going away, floating far, far away, like us, Martin murmured, pulling Anna closer for a soft kiss, while Eleanor laughed delightedly at the scene. The sun began to set, and the three walked hand in hand toward the house. Eleanor, nestled between them, swung her arms back and forth, quietly singing an invented song. Anna felt a peace she had never known. It no longer mattered what had been left behind, the judgments, the loneliness, the hidden nights of tears. Everything had been worth it to get to this moment. As they passed through the park gate, Martin squeezed her hand and said, "I promise you, we will never get lost again." And Anna believed him. For the first time in a long time, she truly believed him. As the night slowly fell and the city lights began to gleam, they disappeared down the quiet street, forming the image of a family that, after so much suffering, had finally found its way home. Together. Conclusion: And final call to action. If this story touched your heart, don't let it end here. Give a like to show you also believe in soul-comforting endings. Comment below which moment moved you the most on this journey of love and reunion. This story is a powerful reminder that true love, once buried, finds its way back through the fierce determination of a mother and the redemption of a father. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any new story that will make you laugh, cry, and fall in love again. Share it with those you love. Spread this emotion and comfort other hearts too, because stories like these truly come alive when they are felt and shared.